Welcome to the lunch session and a keynote for All AI 2024. Those of you who are in the morning, welcome back. Those of you who come from the sessions, welcome back. Again, my name is Amir Dabirian. I'm the Provost and Vice President of Academy Affairs. I want to also do a shout out to the group that put this together. Gabby, Danielle, Devin, Megan. They only had 30 days to do this, and they created an all-star. We have an all-star speakers for all of you. Thank you again for coming to this session. Before I introduce our keynote speaker, I want to talk about, this is what I did in the morning. For those of you, it might be duplicate, but we did a survey across campus. How many of you guys did take the survey? Thank you. This is a survey that was originally developed by San Diego State, and we used their instrument to replicate it on campus. Thanks to Sue and instructional research, and we are. So the San Diego State had 7,000 responses. And so far in 1 week, we have about 5,000 responses. And we're going to continue on because we are a bigger campus and we can beat San Diego State. So we are going to go above 7,000. So we are, in 1 week, we did 5,000. So I want to just share the result with you and then turn it over to our keynote speaker. So let me see if I can. All right. So if you look at it, you can see about 4,000 students that responded to the survey, and it's about 800 our faculty staff responded to, for 4945 as of yesterday. So it's probably already over 5,000. So some of the keynotes, if you go next, is that if you look at it, the first one is about awareness. We're looking at it, most of the respondents says, AI is not too complex, right? And the faculty and staff, which is fantastic, are more engaged in AI on our campus and our students, which is really a fantastic for our campus that knows that our faculty and staff really going to try to use this as a next generation of teaching for our students. Next. Usage. If you look at the usage of this, you can see that the faculty and staff are more comfortable using AIs than our students are. So right now, some of the students think that maybe they have cheated or they're using it inappropriately. So students are a little bit less comfortable using it. So I'm hoping that these conference and our faculty staff will help out to using these tools more effectively in a classroom. Next, perception. Perception for privacy. That's something that everyone have very much concern about the privacy of and how the ethical usage of AI. So this is a front and center for all of our both faculty, staff, and students. And also over 70% of the students and faculty staff think it's about job security. What's the impact of the job security? Next is about training. Of course, our students don't think they need any training on AI, and our faculty staff think they do. So that's true with all technology tools. Students are very fast of learning them and using them much more faster than a faculty staff, but the training is not. The full survey results, we are going to, after we finish it, we will looking at collaboration and publication of this result with San Diego State. So, and we will have probably a session back from you to show you the result. So by that, I'm gonna introduce our keynote speaker, Mr. Mark Nehmer. He's the Deputy Chief Digital and Artificial Intelligence Officer, CDAO, for AI Strategy in Defense, Content Intelligence and Security Agency, DCSA, at Quantico, Virginia. Mr. Nehmer is responsible for developing and evolving DCSA, strategic vision, governance, talent and acquisition, and talent management framework for artificial intelligence capability required to support and enable operations of DCSA mission and business unit. He was previously the advisor for technical strategy and the first technical director of Defense Insider Threat Management and Analysis Center, the ITMAC, in 2014. Then the Defense Vetting Doctorate, DVC, and PEO in 2018, and all within DCSA. Prior to joining DCSA, Mr. Nehmer was the J65 Division Chief, Risk Management, C4 Analysis and Strategy, United States Cyber Command, responsible for analysis and current and future of DoD and federal risk management, and C4 in instruction, directive and implementation and development of strategies for and behalf of the UC Cybercom J6. Ready? The Program Executive Office with responsibility for overseeing development and operations of advanced technical capabilities, including the practical application of artificial intelligence. Prior to assignments in PEO, his responsibility included managing activity necessary for the stand-up of the Cyber Counterintelligence Division in 2013. Was a founding member responsible for project initiatives that covered technology contracts, funding, and policies related to the establishment of the command and DoD leadership team. A native Crossville, Michigan, Nehmer graduated from University of Michigan and holds bachelor's degree in history and economics. Upon graduation, he relocated to St. Louis, Missouri, where he completed his Master of Business Administration with dual concentration in Finance Information System from Fordham University, where he graduated with summa cum laude. Let's give a tighten hand for Mr. Nehmer. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, and appreciate the opportunity. This is a lot. How about if I stand over here and see if that's a little better? Anyway, I do appreciate the opportunity to be here today, and hopefully shed a little light on federal service and partnerships with the federal government. It's not really all that mysterious, and I want to make sure that we don't look at it like it is. Thank you so much for the introduction. And I know we had a little bit of a delay getting started. Like we say in the military, it is adapt, improvise, and overcome, and we shall do that today. In just a few slides, my objective today is to talk a little bit about federal service, talk a little bit about the agency, and talk a little bit about partnering with the agency, both as a civilian and as an educational institution. We have a lot of opportunities, and more importantly, we serve the nation. Our job is security. Our job is to ensure that we keep as many people alive in the country as possible. We try and prevent suicides. We try and prevent kinetic events like mass shootings in the Department of Defense. And through our policies and through the things that we do from a security perspective, our job is actually to help prevent suicides and mass shootings and theft of intellectual property across the government writ large. So let's dive into that a little tiny bit. We'll talk a little bit about the agency. Let's go by the numbers. DCSA, Defense Counterintelligence Security Agency, was founded in 2018. It's a combination of 7 different agencies from across the federal government. We'll talk about that in a second. But let's focus on the missions first. We have 4 primary mission areas. First one is industrial security. What does that mean? If you're a company, or you're an educational institution, or you're one of the labs, or you are one of the federally funded research centers, and you want to do business with the Department of Defense or any of 34 other federal departments and agencies, you come to my agency, and we're the ones that actually get in your knickers, and we look at everything from the physical plant to the key management personnel to the way that you secure things, your practices and processes, and we make a determination that you either are or are not trustworthy. We do that for about 10,500 companies currently, roughly 13,800 locations across the nation. That's the industrial security piece. That's the tip of the iceberg for industrial security. The next mission down is personnel security. And if you think about personnel security, that's really if you want to come and work for the federal government, anywhere in the federal government, any of 105 federal agencies, 448 sub-agencies in those 105 federal agencies, you're coming to us because we're going to do your background investigation. When I say us, I mean DCSA. We grew from about 900 people in 2018 before we combined to be over 14,000 people today. And that's because we have agents, field agents, spread across the entire nation. We do roughly 2.6 million background investigations per year. That's roughly 10,000 per day. So it's a huge undertaking. That means we have to have a lot of people that are well trained and actually understand what it means to do a background investigation. And it has to be fair, it has to be equitable, it has to make sure that we uncover the truth, because that's what we seek, is the truth. We're trying to ensure that the people we entrust the secrets with, the people that stand by your side as another federal civilian or as a uniformed military member, are trustworthy, are worthy of wearing that uniform or worthy of the credentials that we're going to grant. That's the mission of the personnel security mission. Counterintelligence. So we have counterintelligence and insider threat. They're lumped together. Counterintelligence, if you think of foreign adversaries, foreign nations, send out their intelligence agencies, their intelligence people to try and steal secrets, try and turn people into traitors, try and get people to do kinetic acts. Kinetic act would be shooting somebody. That's a kinetic act. We try and prevent that sort of thing. Counterintelligence tries to uncover them. The interesting thing about the counterintelligence division in DCSA is because of our unique authorities in the federal government, we're the only ones that can go up to any company that does classified business with any part of the federal government and walk in and cannot be denied entry. FBI, NCIS, AFOSI, Air Force Special Office of Investigations, etc., they all require a warrant. We do not. By contract, we can walk in, we cannot be denied. The cost for denying us entry is your contract. That can be worth tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. So we are never denied access. But that's a huge burden of trust. So we are very careful about how we train the people that have that access. That's the security training division. Security training, we train and we take great lengths to do a very meticulous job of training the security professionals that do industrial security investigations and personnel security investigations. We also train a slightly different flavor of counterintelligence agents. Finally, insider threat. If you think of back in 2013, there were two major events that were kind of pivotal in the way that the federal government looks at insider threat. One of them was all over the news and has been, I'm going to say out loud, misrepresented in the media as something that it wasn't, and that was the Snowden event. I happened to be at Cyber Command. I happened to be, that particular summer, the federal government was subject to furlough. That means we were required to take one day off without pay per week. So we did, my day off was Monday. There was a meeting between the President and the Secretary of Defense and the commander of U.S. Cyber Command. That was General Alexander. This is July 4th weekend. Over that weekend, the only reason I know this is because I happened to get a phone call from the Deputy Commander, a 3-star General, Rooster. Phenomenal, man. That's a different story. I'll tell some of you some other stories about that later. Anyway, I got a phone call from him saying, "You're not going to believe what happened. What's your furlough day?" I told him it's Monday. He said, "Tuesday you have a new job." This is right after Snowden. Because apparently, according to Rooster, the President was in with the Secretary of Defense, talking to the Secretary of Defense and actually poking at General Alexander, saying, "What are you going to do about the rest of the department? I got it that you're squared away with NSA and you know what's going on." Snowden was from NSA, by the way. "But what are you doing about the rest of the department?" So I had a new job on Monday, or on Tuesday, because I was off on Monday, and that was to do a scrub of all policies related to security and insider threat for the entire department across all the agencies and across all the services. So this was a rather major undertaking, and it set a few things in motion. We published something, and then in September, the Washington Navy Yard shooting. I don't know if any of you recall that, but that was one of 3 major shootings in the Department of Defense where a lot of people lost their lives. And these were all insider threats. And the characteristics that are common amongst all of these, including WikiLeaks, which was Private Manning at the time, that was in 2010. The characteristics that are common among all of those is that we had the data, we had the information, had we acted on it, had we recognized that we had that information, we could have prevented those things from happening. We could have intervened early enough to change the trajectory of the lives of those individuals, number one, or number two, we could have intervened and taken them out of access. So one of two things could have happened. We had that information at our fingertips. We didn't know how to get after it. So I say all of that, and I'll come back to that, but remember that story for just a moment. Let's finish out about DCSA. I talked about 7 different agencies coming together. These are the agencies that we're talking about. We collapsed them. This is following it always takes a big event in the Department of Defense to move that ship because it's a huge, huge ship of state, and it doesn't move with very much agility. So it took the theft of a bunch of people's background investigation information by, well, it's already in public knowledge, and it's China. So China stole it, and it didn't come straight from OPM's coffers. It came from another agency which didn't quite secure things. They used a standard password for administrative access to their servers, and lo and behold, Chinese got in like that, then they moved laterally, and at the end of the day, they ended up getting 33 million people's background investigations, including my own. Thank you very much. So I know actually the Chinese government probably knows more about me than anybody else at this point. Anyway, so that was a pretty big deal, and that promulgated a bunch of new policy. And one of the other things that it promulgated was the Congress decided that we could no longer have amateurs or less than the best running security on all of this really highly sensitive information. So they said, Department of Defense, you take it over. You build the system. And then they figured that, well, if they're going to build the system, maybe they should also run the stuff, not just build it, but actually operate it. So then they kicked it around and decided that the industrial security mission, since it's so tightly tied to the personnel security mission, that maybe they ought to be in the same house. And then they started looking around the rest of the department and the rest of the federal government and saying, oh, yeah, that agency should be here. They're doing polygraphs. That's kind of related to that. That agency should be here because they're the ones that do adjudication. So when you do this background investigation, somebody has to read those 250 pages worth of notes and stuff and figure out whether the person that they're talking about actually meets the adjudicative guidelines. So that's their job. What I'm getting at is there's a ton of data related to all of this. And how do we get after that? Well, so I go here to talk about where DCSA is headed with a couple of points in mind in particular. If you look at the horizontals, the first one is recruit, develop, engage, retain. That's actually what I'm doing here. Thank you very much. Welcome to my recruitment event. So I'm looking for a few good people to come and join me and make a difference in the world, okay? So that's it. And how do we do this? If you look at the third parallel, or third horizontal, it's enable a productive and engaged workforce. And the next one down is develop secure digital environment. That's what I do. That's my job. So the other hat is this recruit and be out and be the voice of the government, be the voice of the agency, and talk about federal service and demystify that a little tiny bit. But the other thing is the more exciting thing to me, of course, is being a geek. And I get to do that every single day. So it's just a wonderful, wonderful thing. what is it like, and I'll come back to some of the other stories later on if I remember. I'm old, so I forget things. So anyway, what's it like to work at DCSA? In the government, by policy and by law, we promote diversity. At my agency, we don't care about the law, we don't care about the policy, we don't care about that as a reason behind this. We do it because it's the right thing to do. We promote diversity in thought and action, who the people are, because it's important to get that when you're trying to build things that are going to impact lives of the entire nation. You want these different perspectives. You want people from all over the country. That's why I'm not in the Beltway today. The Beltway, that's the Washington, D.C. area. They call it the Beltway, and it really, truly is more like a noose than a Beltway. But anyway, having said that, it's about trying to find people who think differently, who have different experiences, different life experiences that we can all bring to bear to change the trajectory that we're on. And you can be a geek, you can be a not geek. I wasn't a geek, I didn't know that I was anyway. So you heard my background, economics, history, my undergraduate degree, love, bleed maize and blue, always have, always will. But that qualified me to go work in retail. So that's great, yay. But that's okay. It wasn't me. I figured out it wasn't me. So I'm back and got my master's degree. And I got a little closer to what's inside of here. And that was finance, because I'm really highly organized when it comes to certain things like numbers, and then information systems, because I'm a geek, I just didn't know it. Oh, so here's a little side story, and I'll just tell you this little side story just for a second. You'd think that being a geek, growing up, going to Michigan, I would have gone to School of Engineering and gotten a degree in computer science or something like that, or computer engineering. Well, if you know Michigan, you know that they have snow. And I made the mistake of taking a class, a computer programming class, in winter. Walking across the quad, had a stack of cards, because back in my day, we had computer cards. You didn't have things on a disk or something like that. Computer cards. I slipped on the ice, the cards went everywhere, and I said, oh, I'm never doing this again. So I became an econ and history major, so that was the end of that. And I paid for that for decades in the private sector, trying to find my way back to something that was actually meaningful to me. So at DCSA, we've started doing more and more and gotten a little better organized at having internships. 2 years ago, our internships were, we advertised 33, ended up having 29. This past year, we advertised 119, and I don't know yet how many will actually be on hand, but I suspect it'll be just a little north of 100 students will come in for internships starting in June. And this is a sample of some of those internships. The first line, it's on purpose, that's the person that's coming to work for me. I'll tell you two quick stories about this, which will help shape how you think about the process. We had over 1,100 applicants for 119 vacancies for internships, so very competitive. 2 years ago, I was out in Silicon Valley. I'm out in Silicon Valley all the time. It just happens to be one of those hazards of the job. But I'm out in Silicon Valley meeting with one of the companies we do a lot of business with, and the CEO went to Illinois. He did stay in computer science, and he graduated the same year I did. And he owns a multi-billion-dollar company as opposed to me. Yes, well, anyway. So we knew each other because we had run across each other back in school, as it turns out, so we've gotten to become friends here. His president of his company went to Berkeley. So he said, you know, if I could introduce you to the dean of the engineering school. I said, sure. So we went over and we saw, this was in August, and they said, if you come back before November, we could set up so you could talk to our engineering students. And if you did that, maybe some of them might be interested in internships. So I said, that's a great idea. So we did. And lo and behold, I'm sorry, this thing seems to be going off. Lo and behold, we ended up with applicants from Berkeley, and we hired some of them to be interns. And they completed their internship, graduating, and we have several of them coming back to work for us now full-time. One of the things about an internship at the Department of Defense, and is true with most of the federal government, if you're an intern, you complete your internship and you do it well, you get invited back for an internship the following year without competition. If you're graduating, you get invited back, but it's not for an internship, it's for a full-time job without competition. So one of the toughest things I had was getting into the federal government. It took me decades because I thought I was going to go right from undergrad. Of course, I worked in retail because that's what I was qualified for. But I thought I was going to work for the Fed. Turns out you had to be at the top of your class to work for the Fed. So that wasn't happening. What I'm telling you is if you have an opportunity to get in the door with something like this, it's worth exploring. It's worth taking the chance. Now, everybody gets a clearance, so there will be some very exhaustive and invasive paperwork that you'll get to do. It's a pleasure. And we will investigate that. And we actually turn that stuff in a couple of weeks now instead of 8 to 9 months. When I did mine in 2008, it took, I want to say 11 months to get my clearance. And that was a top secret clearance as opposed to a secret. But the secret clearances are being done in a couple of weeks, about 45 days, I think. And top secret clearances are about twice that long, as opposed to 10 to 11 months. And some of the worst ones were going on for several years to get those done. And the difference is data and how we handle that data. So you'll notice a number of these internships they're kind of all over the board, but I will offer that some of them are for positions that are here. The real exciting ones for me, because those are AI, are going to be in the Beltway. They're going to be near headquarters. Our headquarters is in Quantico, Virginia, and my office, I have a desk in Quantico. I have an office in Arlington by the Pentagon, because I need the proximity to the Pentagon for regular meetings there. And then we have another office up in Fort Meade. And that's typically where our internships are that are the most interesting for computer science people, data science people. But if you want to be a background investigator or counterintelligence agent or personal security investigator, industrial security investigator, those positions are all over the country, including here in Orange County. So my expectation is that we will, next year, open up our internships in September, close the application process in end of October, do interviews in November, and have offers out in December, as opposed to this year where the offers just finally got completed last month. And I'm apologizing in advance to anybody who applied. So, on to AI. We have a mandate both in the Department of Defense and now in the federal government to use AI to support operations. And I'm not in the habit of reading slides. I'm not in the habit of doing a prepared speech. I'm in the habit of having a conversation. So that's what I'd like to do. This tells you a lot, and it's the OMB circular that was just published several weeks ago. But we are driven by that. We are required to be responsive to that. So we must prove that we have a plan and are on that plan to actually sunset legacy processes and replace them with artificial intelligence enabled processes. This is why. So remember I was talking about if we only had in the very beginning about those insider threats, that we had the data available to us if we only recognized it? Yeah, so the old way is the way that I'm talking about, where it can take weeks to months once you get data to actually crunch it manually, because it's all by people, and we never have enough people. And then finally at the end, if you happen to correlate all the right data, you might understand that something's unfolding. But typically we don't, because typically what we get are snapshots of data. And those snapshots are typically not joined with other snapshots of data. So you end up getting snippets, and the kinetic events happen. What we've designed, and this is where that story comes into play about being an inner geek and not being qualified for my job. I read a lot. I cared a lot. It really struck me here about the Navy Yard, about what happened at Fort Hood, both sets of shootings, Pensacola. Those things really struck me. And then the suicides from the military, people coming back from overseas, suicides, thousands of them, thousands a month. That's where we were. Less now, but still way too many. We've spent now hundreds of millions of dollars doing research into human behavior to try and understand what characteristics are present that we can describe in data that can help us determine that someone is under stress and how that stress is unfolding so that we can recognize when someone is likely to move from being just under stress to acting out on that stress, whether it's to harm themselves or harm others, or take information that's going to end up harming others. I'll leave that alone because the rest of the conversation is classified. But at the end of the day, I decided that it was more important that I spend my spare time learning how to build an architecture that could actually handle that data at volume and speed so that we could actually identify when, across all this different type of data that's available, when someone is under stress, someone is likely to be under stress, someone is likely to commit suicide or kill somebody. That's why I do what I do. And we can do this at speed and volume to cover down on 4.5, 5 million people at the same time with a clearance, or the 15 or 20 million people that have access to DoD facilities, then I'll retire. It's not going to happen anytime soon. Maybe another 5, 6 years. But that's when I'm ready to retire. But not yet. Not yet. I've got something to do. I've got something that's important. So I'm doing it. This is what we do. This is what we do in the department. This is what we do all over the government. We spend a lot of time, we spend a lot of people power trying to figure out what's happening over here in the data from all these different sources, and then handing it off to somebody else that's actually in the specific mission so they can organize it and try and make sense of it. And do that in enough time so that you can actually act on it in a meaningful way. I built an architecture that can actually automate all of this. All of it. The only thing I still don't have is a way to handle all the data and all the transactions at once. The architecture that I've built can handle about 1 million transactions a day. I need to be able to handle tens of billions of transactions a day. That's when I can retire. So remember I was talking about having to go into Berkeley and found a student, and we got a couple of interns. One intern that I couldn't get is a mechanical engineer, and this should tell you a little bit about what we're looking for. We're not looking for someone that has the specific skills. We're looking for someone who has a different way of thinking about things. He's a mechanical engineer. He did an AI project on particulate matter to be able to predict pollution based on tires and fuel consumption and the different types of engines that are spewing out pollution and that sort of thing. But I thought about that and I thought, this guy can find milliseconds in my architecture because the way he thinks is so different than a cloud engineer or cloud architect. That's what I'm looking for, someone who has vision and someone who has a heart and someone who has a passion for making a difference. That's what we're looking for in the government. So whether we're talking about internships or full-time careers after graduation or partnerships for projects, That's what we're looking for. We're looking for deep passion for making a difference. So that's what I'm here for. I'm here to talk about that and answer questions. If you have, I'm happy to answer questions about what it means to be in a federal service, or how you get there, how you stay there, what are the different types of things that you can do. I'm here for you. So I'm open for questions if anybody has any. I prefer a conversation than I do a slideshow, by the way. So there we go. Questions? Yay. Sir?
The OPM hack,
Yes.
I was notified about that years ago as well.
Yeah.
And I think they had us join LifeLock or something like that.
Yes.
Whatever happened? Like, I never heard anything else after that.
Oh, you're still being monitored.
Is this?
Yeah, we got.
Maybe it's classified, but are they using it? Or?
Yeah, we got you. No, seriously, I have the same thing. They haven't said anything, but they're still monitoring us because the DoD CIO pays that bill.
Okay, so people are watching out for it.
Yes. And once in a great while, well, actually, my husband got notified not too long ago that there was something going on, so he did a little correction and all good. So it's pretty rare, but when something does happen, we do get notified. Yes, sir?
How much internship pays?
I'm sorry?
Internship?
Internships are at a GS5 rate. So all of the salary rates and that sort of thing in the federal government are public knowledge. And you can go to the OPM website and find whatever the GS scale rate is. And internships are GS5. Now, they do get the locality differential, and in the DC area, that's about 28% on top of the base rate. You're welcome. Other questions? Sir?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
So a question kind of relating to the end of, like the few slides ago about supporting interns and such. Yeah, not that far back.
Oh.
But, just like pretty much one more. Yeah, that one.
Okay.
So you mentioned like you've seen students who like have potential, and I mean there are a lot of those out there. But then for some of them, I've seen it's because they don't have a support network, they don't have the right friends or the right parents or even the teachers to support them in their journey, especially towards AI. Then I'm kind of wondering what can we do in our schools to support that?
That's a good question. So the question, did everybody hear the question? Basically, what can be done in the schools to support this journey toward enabling an AI literate students so that they're better prepared for opportunities like the ones I'm talking about?
And not being afraid of AI.
Oh, well, that's part of literacy. And that's actually one of the things that I'm fighting right now in my own agency, because there's a small cadre of us that are just really gung-ho. When I say small, I mean I can count them. And then there are a bunch that are supporters, but they're a little risk-adverse. And then there are a whole bunch more that are really risk-adverse. So thankfully, the director of the agency is one of those that's a supporter. And some of the other key management personnel are supporters. So that's a good thing. One of the things we found is that AI literacy is lacking across the government, and especially in key management. And so there's a term that we use in the government, it's called frozen middle. Typically, it's the senior leaders know what's going on, they have the vision, they see the opportunity, and they say, this is where we have to go. And the people that are coming in at the lower levels are like you. They're fresh out of college, they're young, and they're excited, and they're digital natives, and they see the opportunity, they want to get going right now. And then there's the frozen middle that are really concerned about the status quo, and that's all they really want to do, is make sure they don't have to change anything before they retire. And there's a lot of that, an awful lot of that. So,
And not just in public, in private roles.
oh yeah, we see it all over the place. Standing up in front of different crowds, I'm always challenged by somebody who has in an organization where there's that frozen middle, and They believe they have the right to say no. I was in Monterey last week, the Naval Postgraduate School, with the senior leaders. So it was a bunch of people like me. Well, not exactly like me, because I'm one of those super AI geeks, but they were kind of like me. They were learning how to lead AI-enabled organizations. So these were 2- and 3-star generals and the equivalents in civilians from all over the Department of Defense. And they talked about the frozen middle and how are you going to get past that frozen middle. And this one 3-star general from U.S. Space Force, still can't believe there is a Space Force, but that's a different story. Okay, so this one 3-star general from U.S. Space Force says, there is one way you get past the frozen middle, and that is, if the person can't say yes, thank them for their no and move on. Because if they don't have the right or the authority to say yes, then thank them for their opinion, because that's what it is. And move on. Find the person that can say yes, and that's the one that you actually have to convince. Everybody else, it's a well-considered opinion, and you need to consume that, because maybe there's some granular of truth in there. Maybe there's something that's worthwhile listening to. Every once in a while there is. So you have to listen to all of it. But that doesn't mean it should stop you. If they can't say yes, don't let them say no. So AI literacy is all about understanding that, yes, there are things that can go horribly wrong if you're not careful. So I mentioned something about responsible AI. Internships, there we go, it's QR code. I will come back to that. No, we'll go back to that. All right, I'll leave the internship slide up there for a while. Responsible AI. In the Department of Defense, in the whole federal government, we have a responsibility to make sure that we are doing things ethically and equitably. And most of that comes down to the data and the questions that we're asking of the data. Fundamentally, responsible AI starts with, should we be asking this question of the data? Is it the right question? If you get the answer, is the answer going to tell you something that's actually meaningful and useful? Well, that's part of our job, is to understand that before we get started. So I'm also running another group at the DoD level that's exercising how you implement that in real time in operations, making sure that you're looking at the data, because let's face it, there's bias across most of the data related to people, because there's bias against who they are, where they're from, gender. Name the protected classes, name the additional classes. There's bias across all of those characteristics in the data. We have to protect against that. We have to mitigate those biases before we allow any of these things to go forward, before we allow any of that to be the basis for a decision. To mitigate that, largely in the Department of Defense today, we use a human in the loop or a human on the loop. There's a slight difference, and it's not something we need to go in today, but human in or on the loop is important, because we don't want machines making an autonomous decision. If we look at it that way, then AI doesn't have to be scary. AI doesn't have to be any scarier than any one of us in this room making a decision, because it's a decision aid instead of a decision maker. So our job on this end of the AI is to help make sure that we give as much accurate and cleaned information as we possibly can, so that the person that's actually making the decision can make something that's well informed and timely. Our job in the Department of Defense, as is in the rest of the federal government, is to make the best and most well-informed decisions possible based on the information we have at our fingertips. AI part is to speed that decision cycle so that we make decisions at the speed of relevance. Sir.
Sorry, so I'm a computer science undergrad.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited about getting into AI and data science and machine learning. But at the same time, to kind of build on what you just talked about, I also am a little concerned too, because I don't want to be the one to develop like a new algorithm and new AI that will cost someone their job. Like to use an example, like let's say if the department's like, okay, we think there's going to be an attack at such and such a time. At least right now with the current system, you have things in place to check, to confirm, double check, triple and quadruple check. But if you were to say develop an AI that could detect that kind of information, you may not have those same double, triple, quadruple checks. So I guess to kind of build on what you're talking about making sure AI is done ethically, like what's the federal government's approach to making sure that you use AI in a way that is ethical and it's accurate, but at the same time it doesn't cost us in terms of security, or I guess also in terms of losing jobs, or basically making sure that there's a nice balance between using AI but also not cutting corners, especially with something like national security.
Well, absolutely. So, really good questions. It's very important that we make decisions that that the humans make the decisions. So when we and the teams are designing algorithms against the corpus of data that we have, it's important that we ask questions that we should be asking, and that we're not asking it to make decisions. We're asking it to make recommendations. And we're requiring that those recommendations come with a body of evidence. So it's not black box. It's not chat GTP, where we're asking it to do things and all this stuff's out in the wild and it's polluted with all these other things that someone may have spiked in the data. We're very careful about our data sources. Provenance of the data is incredibly important because that helps you understand where your decision criteria is coming from. It's just, I wouldn't go to somebody that I don't know and don't trust and ask their opinion on something that's going to be life or death, or cost somebody or not cost somebody their job. I wouldn't do it. That's ethics. That's being responsible. So in the Department of Defense, we are required to follow responsible AI guidelines. Required. And those include, first guideline is AI ethics. Both the Department of Defense has very specific ethics laid out, defined, well-defined, and the federal government has AI ethics that are well-defined. When I popped up that slide from OPM, or OMB rather, Office of Management and Budget, that requires everybody in the the whole federal government to operationalize AI responsibly. So they have to follow the ethics. It's critically important. So I wouldn't have fear. I would embrace the opportunity to make a difference and ensure those guardrails stay in place. That's what I would do if I were you. That's what I am doing personally. So other questions? Sir?
You mentioned safeguards that the DoD has in their designing of their AI system.
Yes.
But what's stopping a private company from investing into an AI that actually isn't easy to make a decision from, like ethical design?
So I can speak for the Department of Defense. I can't speak for the private sector. And governance over the private sector, other than companies that want to do business with the Department of Defense or any other classified contracts, we don't have in the department, we don't have as an agency any authority over them. If you want to see those sorts of guardrails in place, my suggestion is talk to Congress. Seriously. There's legislation that's come up a couple of times, both in the House and the Senate. Get informed, get involved, make a difference. That's actually what I'm talking about here, is get informed, get involved, make a difference. Complaining about things, it's not enough.
I think we have time for one more question.
Okay.
Right over here.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, thanks for joining us today. I'm wondering, so you're talking about keeping the human in the loop. I love that. But these giant tech companies right now are trying to work on autonomous agents. So what I'm wondering about is your department going to just prohibit autonomous agents, or there's some sort of line, like a defining line, where those are okay and where those are not okay?
Well, so very good question. I love the distinction. And yes, we do have autonomous agents, and they are for non-kinetic activities. So we're not going to pull a trigger that's going to cost a life autonomously. It's just not in the cards. Now, as things unfold 20 years from now, I don't know. I won't be working there anymore. 10 years from now, we'll see, but I don't think so. But on the trajectory that we're on today, no. We do have a fine line. Autonomous driving vehicles, yes, within guardrails. So we even have guardrails on autonomous driving vehicles, submersible aerial vehicles, that kind of thing. But no, as far as things that would have a kinetic effect, no. Just not in the cards. Sorry.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Before you go, I wanted to, first of all, thanks, Mark, for the engaging talk about the AI. But I want to leave you with one nugget. You know, the reason is generative AI is getting so popular today. It uses a Q-star algorithm. So if you have a chance, go home, Google Q-star algorithm. And the difference between what we have now and what we had before is this. We had concept of machine learning in the past that you learn from the past. Machine learning learns from everyone. The difference with the added Q-star algorithm in generative AI, that now it just doesn't look at those. It also predicts and makes decision. That's the difference today and the past. And when you're looking at math, it can do it with 100% accuracy. So there are in fields that can make 100% accuracy, and there are fields there are lots of question mark, as Mark indicated, and that's what we need human intervention. So I want to just leave you with a nugget, and thanks Mark again for their time. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And please know that we have T-shirts and fanny packs in the back, so please feel free to grab one.